Welcome to Bridging the Education Gap, the podcast where parents, teachers, and education leaders come together to share insights, stories, and strategies that connect learning at home and in school. Whether you're a parent navigating homework struggles, a teacher fostering classroom breakthroughs, or an education leader seeking innovative solutions, this is your space to learn, grow, and collaborate. Each week, we dive into real conversations about education, from tackling pain points to celebrating success stories, all with one goal: to bridge the gap and empower every child's learning journey. I'm your host, Jessica Shelley. Let's get started. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Jana Haywood, a dynamic leader in the education space. From her journey as a professional basketball player to becoming a dedicated educator, principal, and now a human resources leader, Jana has done it all. She's also the CEO of Illumin Solutions Group, where she helps ignite, inspire, and empower educators and leaders. Jana's story is one of resilience, advocacy, and a deep commitment to ensuring that all students, especially those with unique learning needs, receive the high-quality education they deserve. Jana, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, well, I want to dive into your background a little bit because it has its own unique sort of element, and I think it's really fascinating, honestly. So, from professional basketball player to finance and then into education, walk us through your journey.
Yeah, it has been quite a ride. I'm really excited about the life I've been able to live. What a blessing it has been. But I started, in sports as a youth, like many people in our nation. So from the age of 12 to 23, I was playing basketball and really thought I would be a professional basketball player. I was able to play at St. Louis University on a scholarship and then go overseas and play for a while before realizing that I would have to go pro in something else. And so I came back to the States and started working in my undergrad area of accounting and finance. And shortly thereafter, realized that I really enjoyed spending time with people far more than spreadsheets. And so I made the leap into education and have been there ever since. This past 2 years, I've been able to kind of have this full circle moment of going into human resources administration in the education industry. And so that's been fulfilling in both ways because now I get to bring my HR background and my love for education all into one space.
Gosh, I love it. What an inspiration. Like there's really nothing that's off the table. And so I want to tap into this a little bit more too, because I know that you had mentioned some of this perspective when we first connected, but how has your background in sports influenced your leadership and approach in education?
So I think my time in sports certainly is the foundational aspects of my leadership philosophy and how I approach leadership in general. And in sports teams, developing a high functioning team is critical. Having shared vision is really important, and it's easy. It's very visible to the eye. Everyone wants to win the game. And so I come into the education space really cultivating teams, taking a high performance, asset-based approach because everyone has something to give. And once you're able to articulate what that something is and get people to buy in, you can find yourself having amazing results.
Amazing, amazing. You had shared a little bit about your personal journey in education based on one of your family members. And so I want to tap into that story a little bit too. So let's talk a little bit about special education and how your personal experience with that helped shape your career path.
Yes. So my son, my eldest child, at about 3 years of age, I noticed that he was not accomplishing all the developmental milestones that I had read, like every new parent in all the magazines, journals, and books. And so I was like totally alarmed. Why isn't he talking? Why isn't he connecting? I say, I love you. Why isn't he telling me, Mommy, I love you back? And so we went through and went ahead and got some early assessments because what I had learned through those readings is that early intervention was key. To my surprise, and maybe not so much my surprise, I found out that he was a young child with developmental delays in a number of areas. And what I also knew is that I was fairly resourced in terms of my ability to access special education, but I still felt like I was in a foreign land. It was like being somewhere totally different. And so at that point, I made a decision to enter the field of education so that I would be well versed in what it was that my son would need to be successful in the K-12 space, but also that other families wouldn't have that same kind of I'm alone experience and have a trusted professional that they could rely on.
What were some of those early challenges that you faced as a parent navigating that process of going from, a role outside of education to then stepping into education to be there for your son and kind of learn the ins and outs firsthand?
So the biggest was not showing up at the IEP meetings as the principal. Because I was like, you are in the role of parent, not principal. And I had to really resist that. And as time went on, it became easier because I was just committed to being CJ. That's my son's name, CJ's mom. But I know that because I had a little more arsenal in my toolkit, I would push a little harder in those meetings than maybe was the norm or what was comfortable for the team. I think the other piece was ensuring that I got an equal vote because even though we talk about parents being team members for the IEP team process, I don't know that we always really honor the parent's voice at the same weight as the other professionals that are at the table. So just getting them to acknowledge that and then being able to work collaboratively on his behalf.
My goodness, what a stellar mom, advocating everywhere that you can and being involved and asking those tough questions and pushing a little harder when needed. So, how would you say that that work and that experience has now helped you help other parents feel empowered and advocating for their child's education?
Yeah, it's been everything because when I enter meetings, I very much am conscious around the fact that we tend to speak a lot of jargon in education. And so when it's just us teachers and administrator people, that's fine. But when we're talking to our parents, because we are teachers, I think the signs of a good teacher is taking complex ideas and making them simple. And so I'm really intentional around speaking just common language with my families when we're going through that process. I would say the other piece that has changed my leadership style is just recognizing that every single parent sends their prized possession to us in the school space every single day with the best of intentions for their baby. And I use the word baby, whether it's a kindergartner or a senior, because I've worked all across, pre-K through 12. And even if you don't know what it is you need, you know that you want the best for your child.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. Well, now in your current role in HR leadership, what has been some of your biggest successes? I want to kind of transfer over to the work that you're doing now. So, what success have you seen?
Yeah, so I have been really consistent in my leadership message, and I think that's helped me have some success in terms of recruitment and retention of staff. Throughout my entire career, it's been in the forefront the importance of self-care, well-being, authenticity, and joy. And so if we're not having fun, then we're doing something wrong because we're serving kids. Like there's fun everywhere. They will remind you and they will let you know this is not fun. And so I have worked really hard to create a kind of staff culture calendar that builds in moments for celebration and then been a little flexible in my mindset around just being responsive to the moment.
Phenomenal. Full support. We support the teachers, we support the staff. That blends down into, supporting students and families. So, from the angle of supporting educators, what do you see as the biggest challenges facing teachers today? And then you had mentioned the culture calendar, but what are some other ways that you're working to support them?
Wow. So thinking about where to start with that, I would say we keep talking about the new norm or going back to the normal. And my question every day is what's normal? And so beginning to define that with the generation of teachers that are in the workforce currently has been my new challenge because they are the ones doing the work every day, despite what anyone else in media or at home or other industries are saying about the work that we do as educators. I know, and everyone knows that right now we don't know what the future holds in terms of the Department of Education. Like, is this going to be a federal something? Is it going to be state? Is it going to be local? And so that ambiguity and uncertainty is something that I'm working to kind of be a stabilizing force as an educational administrator in HR, and then just budget constraints. So we're asking teachers to do a lot more with a lot less. And my role is to come up with ways to mitigate that. So how do we take things off the table and also show appreciation, which is it's not a dollar compensation, but recognition, appreciation, and celebration of people's hard work goes a long way in our field.
I think that lends itself really nicely to the fact that you had mentioned you're like the well-being coach in your district. So, can you talk more about why joy and authenticity and core values are so critical in schools?
Yeah, so we are some of the first identifiers of talent. So it works well with education and HR because young people come to school not necessarily knowing what they're really good at. And so as we're able to allow them to just be their authentic selves in the space, it's easy to see what those skills, talents, and abilities are that rise to the surface. And so I was a young person in school who was really shy and kind of secretive about the things that I liked and enjoyed. And it wasn't until I bust out of my shell and was open to the fact, yeah, I'm a 6 foot skinny string being somebody, but I bet you can't catch me on a track or beat me on a basketball court where I really became my best self, my fullest self. And so I've been committed to trying to create those kind of climates for adults and children.
What advice would you give to school leaders that are looking to improve retention and overall teacher satisfaction?
So I think number one is ask them where the gaps are. So what is it that you need and how would you define support? because what supports Jana is not the same thing that supports Jessica. I think that's number one. I would also say lending and creating opportunities for input and voice early on when there really is a decision to be made. I know that teachers are really good at discovering or uncovering when we're asking them after the decision has been made. So, and then taking that feedback and putting it into action immediately is something that I would say helps with having more success and investment from the community.
Yes, so those practical strategies, getting buy-in a little early on in the process kind of helps create that culture of trust and helping them feel supported and valued in the coming up. So, you mentioned that your company, Illumin Solutions Groups, focuses on igniting and empowering leaders. And so I want to kind of jump over to that section. You are just so multifaceted. This is a phenomenal conversation.
Thanks, Jessica.
What really inspired you to start that initiative?
Yeah, so Lumen Solutions Group, as you said, we're here to ignite, inspire, empower. And so I did a lot of studying of Simon Sinek, who is one of the thought leaders in our industry and really just in industry in general, and starting with why. And so igniting someone's burn and connecting them to their why, I think, is pivotal when you're trying to get someone to fulfill their purpose and passion. And so for Lumen Solutions Group, the word illumine itself is the ability to brighten or light something up from within and then shine that outside. And so I believe that every single person has something to give. And part of our work as a company is to help identify what those things are and to show you where the market is for you to share them.
Yes, 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 yes. All of the above. Yes. I think, as educators, we go into it because of that passion for helping support kids and families. And then things can kind of distract you from your initial path or reason why. And so it's great to hear that not only have you been able to cultivate a culture of trust and support within your district, but also that you're a resource to help other schools, other districts, other classrooms, other teachers also be able to kind of reignite that passion for why they do what they do. You had mentioned love and leadership before. And so, as the core philosophy, let's unpack that a little bit. So, tell us what it means and how it really applies to leadership or education in general.
Yeah, so as a mom, behind me it says my greatest blessings call me mom. As a woman, I think often in leadership roles we hide our superpower of being nurturing and caring and sensitive to certain things. Sometimes it's considered a deficit instead of the strength that it really is. And so in the Lumen Solutions Group, we believe that love is the foundational skill of any leadership philosophy, at least if you plan on being successful. And so we've taken both of the aspect of how we treat people and then what we've learned that's successful or effective in leadership and kind of married them together. And so love and leadership was born in terms of letting someone know that you can be really vulnerable in our space because it's a space of support designed to help you navigate leadership as you move forward.
Do you have any practical strategies? Like, let's say that we have school leaders or administrators that are listening to the podcast right now. What's something that they can do tomorrow in their school building to kind of start leading with that if they haven't already?
Yeah, so I think the first thing around leading from the lens of love is just showing up as yourself. So we already talked about that, but I think that when you actually give access to your heart to others, that is a display of love. It's an act of like radical love because you're being very vulnerable. I think that when you see people for who they are, that's a practical strategy as well. So if I know that you have a birthday or there's a special anniversary coming up, and I acknowledge that, I think that's a sign that I care. I think that caring is a version of love.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I want to kind of tap into that sort of like vulnerability piece as well and through the lens of mentorship, right? So how do you think that mentorship plays a role in developing strong school leaders?
So mentorship, I just did a masterclass on mentorship, and one of the things that we really focused in on is how having a great mentor can help you accelerate your career because you don't have to learn everything experientially. I think that sometimes we really believe that we have to try it for ourselves in order to determine if it worked. Education isn't a new market. It's been around for a long time. You don't have to try. You don't have to touch the stove to know that it's hot. So I think that's the power of mentorship. I think the other piece is having someone who's invested with no expectation of return, like in a literal sense, gives you a lot of opportunity to be honest about your areas for opportunity and also for someone to be able to share with you what they have observed objectively. Because even when you have a supervisor evaluator, there can be a tinge of bias there. I think that having a mentor provides a little bit of a blueprint or map for where the landmines are. So you don't have to step on these things, you get around. I can't say enough about when there's a really good match in the mentorship space, how much it pays off in the long run.
So let's say that we have some new teachers that are in a building, whether they're new to teaching completely or they're new to your district. What are some ways that maybe those sorts of transitions could be supported through mentorship if there isn't a formal mentorship program?
Yeah, so I think one of the ways for a new teacher to any building to establish an informal mentorship relationship would be during the lunch period. So teachers love to get together in the classroom during lunch. I think that you naturally have those teachers who will invite, but if you are the leader of the building or the space, I think that you assign ambassadors to make sure that there's someone who will go and initiate that kind of invitation. And then teachers are able to listen in a non-threatening manner to the conversations that their colleagues are having. It might be about the PLC, it might be about the upcoming CBM, whatever it is that they're talking about, and then begin to ask their own questions. And then all of a sudden you have an offshoot from lunch to planning periods, maybe after hours, where it's a more informal situation, but you get to see it in real time and feel supported by community.
Yes, I think too, having that mindset of maybe if you are maybe a veteran in the building or a veteran teacher, having that sort of mentality to go in and offer yourself as a mentor, like, hey, let me know if you need anything, because it can be very overwhelming going from never teaching to, just now teaching, which is in a completely different climate than maybe what they were prepared for from their teacher prep program.
Yes.
And or even just moving to a new district and getting used to a new community or new, procedures and things like that. So I think it maybe goes both ways, where the communication channels need to be opened on both ends to make sure that those mentorships could organically form.
Yeah, I love that, Jessica, because I was just gonna say, as you make that statement, veteran teachers are gonna save the profession. No one else is gonna do it. We keep coming up with ways and strategies, but the people who are going to honestly draw and retain the next generation of teachers are the ones who've been in the work. So thank you for bringing that up, because it's the truth.
Absolutely, absolutely. I remember some of my first few years of teaching personally, and I was like, "Who's willing to let me ask a question? Is it okay if I speak up?"
Yes.
But really, it comes back to that culture piece of, is there a culture of support? Are those communication channels open? And is the leadership also modeling this for staff in the buildings? So, oh my goodness, I'm excited. Well, as we wrap up, I just have a couple more questions and things to be thinking about for the future. Given the challenges that you've seen in education, there is what is normal, right? As you mentioned, teacher shortages, political tensions, budget constraints. What keeps you personally motivated to continue doing this work?
I love this question. It's an easy one. So the children, I remain in the work for the children. If not me, then, who they say, if not you, then who? And I very much invest in that statement. Our children deserve a high quality education, the absolute best one that we can offer. And so as I look forward to the future, I'm not necessarily committed to what has been, but I am committed to creating an opportunity for what can be. And I believe that our children will tell us, they're going to be speaking to us every single day with their hopes and dreams. And we have to figure out if we're going to be doing it with artificial intelligence in some aspects, but then maintaining human connection in all aspects, because that's what teaching is all about, the social aspects, so that we can make sure that the next generation is in a better position than we were. I think that's kind of like the American dream. I want to hand it off in a better position than what was given to me.
Yes, and that human element I think is going to be even more valuable in the future than maybe we've given it credit for in the past.
Yes.
With the rise of technology and things. So, as educators are approaching the field and there's new leaders even emerging from current teachers, what's maybe one or two pieces of core advice that you could give them to kind of continue them on this inspirational path forward as they make the transition or enter the field completely?
Yeah, so I want to make sure I say move without the ball, because it is a playbook for success in sports and life. But I think in terms of teachers, you're ever evolving. Like, your work is never done. You're going to be a lifelong learner as long as you choose to be in the profession, and embracing it with a lot of patience and grace for yourself and for others. I would say another tidbit that I would give to new teachers or new professionals, new leaders, is to really approach every day as a new day and as an adventure, an opportunity for an adventure, because no day is the same in education. Yeah, you laugh because you know.
We've been there.
Yes. And so you have to just have the confidence that someone hired you because they believed you could do the job and do it at a high level. And I think that takes some of the pressure off once you really embrace and understand that that's true.
Yes, yes. Again, yes, 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 all the way around. I think that the perspectives and the insights that you had provided today are really valuable for our listeners. And if they want to reach out and connect and maybe hear more about the work that you're doing or pick your brain for some additional strategies or things that they're seeing in their building, how can they connect with you and learn more about the work that you're doing?
Well, I am actively on all social media outlets. So X, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok. I'm on all of them.
Oh my
And
goodness.
then yeah. And then you can definitely visit the website, which is illuminsolutionsgroupISG.com. And so we'd love to further the conversation if given the opportunity.
Amazing, amazing. Well, Dr. Jana, thank you so much because this conversation truly has been insightful and inspiring. I think I just said that again. I mean, I'm just beaming. This has been so great. Your journey, your passion for education and commitment to empowering both educators and families is truly remarkable. Thank you again so much for sharing your story and wisdom with us today. To our listeners, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Bridging the Education Gap. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and share it with others in your community. Join us next time as we continue to explore how educators and parents can work together to empower every child's learning journey.